Hey folks, and I want to talk to you about Overcomer. That's right, it's a new faith-based film. It arrives in August, and I'm going to give you all the inside information, and I promise I'll warn you if I start to drift into spoiler territory, but you don't want to miss it. Hey, it's Brandon, and this is Pops on Pop Culture, where I break down all sorts of things, movies and music, comic books, all sorts of things that are pop culture. Today I want to talk about Overcomer. It's a new Christian film that comes out in August, and you don't want to miss my review of this. But if you like what you hear, maybe you're new here, check out the subscribe button, the like button, hit there, and help us grow our channel. And let me talk about Overcomer. Overcomer is a new faith-based film, as I said. It's from the Kendrick Brothers, Alex and Stephen Kendrick. They're famous for making faith-based films for years now. It started with Facing the Giants and Flywheel before moving into Fireproof. And then they made Courageous, and Courageous actually made it into the top 10 at the box office. Very well received by audiences, and then they kind of branched into even more of focus on their film production, and it made War Room. And War Room, of course, did great at the box office. It was huge. It made a huge splash in the faith-based community in a lot of different ways. And I think Overcomer is designed to do the exact same thing. It's a sports film, and it stars Alex Kendrick. He stars in all of their films. He plays a basketball coach, and they are literally one shot away from the championship. So when that doesn't go their way, he's already making plans for the next season. And then one of the strongest elements of the film, I think, is rooted in real life, and that is that the community is faced with economic downturn, right? So jobs are being lost, a factory or business is leaving, and jobs are being lost, so families are moving away. Players he thinks he's going to have are no longer going to be there. So he is literally just punched in the face with what his plans and expectations are going to be for the next season with this great basketball team and stars, with what his real world's going to look like. So the school's struggling financially, and he ultimately is asked to kind of take over the cross-country program, which he has no interest in doing. And there are some really funny elements to that before it sets up their first day, their first meet and greet, and he has one person come out. It's a young girl. She has asthma, and he is just deflated. So the movie centers around a couple different themes and messages, right? So we see her backstory, and then her growth through the film of what that will look like. And then we see his spiritual journey of where he is, where his priorities are, and then of course trying to embrace this relationship with this person. And then you get a couple other characters that have some relevancy. Priscilla Shirer returns. She has a small role as a school administrator. And the cast does a fine job. I don't think the Kendrick Brothers write big epic speeches for their cast or anything like that. But this film is one of the first ones that really showcases a star that is really, really extraordinary. And I don't want to get ahead of myself too much, so if you don't want any more spoilers on anything, then please click away now. I'll understand. Come back. You can hear my analysis. You can tell me if you think I'm crazy or you like what I have to say or not have to say. So there's your chance. And I'm assuming if you're still with me, you're good. I promise I won't spoil anything devastating that will ruin the film for you. But as his character goes to the hospital, he's on a visit. He is visiting a hospital, and there's a room next to the one he's supposed to be visiting. He steps inside. He meets a man who's basically bedridden. He's battling blindness and those kinds of things. And he starts to build a friendship with this individual and go on a lot of spiritual challenges. The film does a very good job of challenging your faith, our faith, of what is our priorities, right? So how do you see yourself in the world, let alone maybe you're not even religious? Just how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as a dad first, or as a coach first, or do you see yourself as a child of God? So that question is introduced pretty early in the film, and is a really, really big game changer for the entire film, and that character story arc over the film is done very well. That character is by far the best part of the film. It was actually pretty impressive that a character that's bedridden in a hospital can have these very powerful emotional scenes, but also can have such a great impact on the story and the direction of the story as a whole. So the little girl is amazing at running, and we see her story develop. We see her start to face with how she's going to kind of navigate through her old ways into new ways, and then how she kind of moves to having what ultimately is a relationship with this individual in the hospital. And I don't want to spoil how all of that works out, nor do I want to spoil what that's supposed to look like. It really, really is done pretty well up until that point. Now, so that's kind of the general gist of the things. Let me talk about what works and what doesn't work. So what works is the general themes and messaging of the film are: one, it's very family friendly, very positive. You'll shed a tear. So all of those things are great. I think it preaches to the choir in the Christian community. So those are the people that are mostly going to like the film. I'm going to give the film a lenient 7, probably a 6 is probably more fair. But you know, I'm a target audience, right? My wife loved the film, that kind of thing. So we're 7s. But if you're not, and you're not a believer, then it's probably only a 6, and maybe a 5 if you don't like these films at all, or you think they're just way too hammy, or you're looking for something that's more big budget or Oscar, then it's probably not a film for you. But I think you'd get something out of it. It has a lot of great sports theme. I thought that was done pretty well. I think that if you have a teen or a youth or someone at that sort of target age, or you don't know how to reach them, or they're dealing with identity crisis issues, this is a film that really, really goes to the heart of a lot of that, what they're going through, how they see themselves in the world, how they're dealing with their own past, and what the past is for other people not becoming their identity, what it doesn't do well. So sadly, like all the Kendrick films, they have these they're not really filmmakers first, right? So the worst part of the Kendrick brother films is they are ministers and Bible people making a movie as a ministry tool, and you'll get all of that, right? So you're going to get devotionals, prayer material, all those kinds of things that help the community grow, run home groups, Bible studies, those kinds of things. And that means that there's also this moment in the film with this very heavy-handed sort of salvation moment, and it doesn't work in a lot of their films, in my opinion. I don't care for how they approach all of that. I think you can do it with something. I think with a little more uncertainty. I'd love to see the characters be like, I'm not sure I totally get this, but I know I have to do something, and then reflect on their change just by actions, not by their words. So that part I thought was actually one of the biggest negatives in the film, was that the inclusion of that part and the delivery of that part. So as I said, and again, this is going to get a little spoilery now, so the girl and her ties to the man in the hospital is really, really good. And I think it moves really, really well, and it becomes believable, even if it is pretty predictable how that's going to play out. But what is sad is at the end, when there's this race, and you know, the audiences are cheering for this girl to win, they're cheering for this, it's been set up the whole time, and then it has this great moment which she should be proud of. And I think for them to kind of confuse the audience with how they spin that, so she has a greater accomplishment than I think she should have had. I think that not to spoil it, but just to have this, you know, you've worked all year, you don't have any experience, you're young, you have asthma, and you've gotten to this point. That in and of itself was an accomplishment. And I think she's supposed to be a sophomore, so that means she would have 2 more years. So she's competing against seniors at that level. It was so believable to get to that part and treat it as a victory, even if they had it where the other key runner and her both broke the records. I think that would have been enough, even if she did or didn't win. It really was just enough to get her to that level, but they couldn't help themselves. They had to go too much. They had to grab a bigger piece of fruit off the tree than they should have. And I think that is definitely the biggest negative for a non-believer and someone who has no real interest or sort of desire for any of the spiritual parts of the film, is that was just too much. And again, if I think that stuff bothers you or whatever, I think you're being a little too critical of faith-based films, because Hollywood does this stuff all the time. Disney's notorious for. Marvel does it. So that's not really a fair total bash. It's just it's a ding for me. And you know, the quality of the film, these are not high budget films. These people are not out there dropping 30, 40, 50, 60 million dollars to make movies. They do the best they can with what they have, and they do a really good job. They've come a long way, and you can see that. There's also a role for his brother. Stephen Kendrick also plays a role. He's kind of like the guy running a track meet, but sadly They keep having him show up like several times. Like, I don't understand why he's running the school track meet, the district track meet, the state track meet. They should have just found a different coach. It was distracting every time he kept showing up to fire a gun and what. I didn't even know we did that anymore, but okay. So I didn't really care for that part either. But again, that was like the nitpicky elements of it. I think that you'll enjoy the film. If you're part of the faith-based community, you're a fan of the Kendrick films, if you like War Room especially, this is definitely a lot more in line with War Room than maybe some other projects, right? So it definitely doesn't have a lot of other like worldly elements or anything like that. Like I said, this is ministry first for them and then film second. So again, that's the gist of Overcomer. It comes out August 23rd. Make sure you mark that date down if you want to check it out. I would definitely encourage you to try to catch it on that opening weekend. Help them make a splash if you want to be a part of things. And if nothing else, if you want a nice weekend show or you want to check something out, it's clean and fun, safe for the family, or you have a teenager and you're into sports, those kinds of things. This is an arena of appeal that isn't totally driven by the Christianity and the faith-based market or anything like that. So that's my feedback. You see the film. Tell me what you think. Maybe you like it, you don't like it, you want to check it out, you don't check it out. Maybe you just hate all the other films or you love their other films. Tell me that too in the comments. Give me your feedback. Tell me what you think. Check out Pops on Pop Culture. Thanks for your time and appreciate anything you can do to help us out and grow the channel.